Hi, and welcome back to Q's Workshop. We're back on the 3020 CNC router, and this video is just going to cover the assembly of it. I'll drop a link in the corner of the unboxing. I've done a quick review of the manual just to understand a bit more on what is going to be needed. I've gone through all of the parts that's here and where they are. I must say the manual is quite detailed. It actually gives you a list of all the parts. The assembly actually calls for each part, so the numbered parts, which is really good, and then it gives you an explanation of what needs to be done. So that's really nice versus some of the manuals I've seen on machines like this. They're pretty horrendous. But yeah, let's give it a go and get this thing assembled. So I'm just gonna get where I need to be and get all the parts out. Right, so the very first piece is getting the gantry mounted. So what I did off camera is I just went through all of the pre-assembled parts and just made sure they're all tight and everything is mounted correctly as it stands here now. The very first piece is then just getting the gantry mounted to the base. One of the things that I've noticed is a little bit different on this machine versus some of the others. Again, it's from 3-year-old YouTube videos, but one of the things that's a little bit different is they don't have nuts, either T-nuts or hammer nuts, that are sitting in the extrusion for you to fasten the gantry against. This machine is actually drilled and tapped into the base. So we're going to need 16 of these. Right, so all the screws are loosely fitted. This step, I would say, is pretty key because it's the adjustment of the alignment of the gantry. So in the manual it says adjust the gantry position and make sure that the gantry is perpendicular to the platform. And the reason that's key is because everything the machine is going to do afterwards is going to be reliant on the gantry being perpendicular, because that means that it cuts at 90-degree angles. If the gantry is skew, it's going to cut skew. So I've got at least a level out, or a measuring instrument out, to make sure that we can get this alignment correct. So I'm just going to make this higher. I first just took out a normal square. It's not big enough to actually measure this, so I took out this larger one. I've set it to 90 degrees. I've actually compared it with my square to make sure that it's measuring true. Now we need to try and actually get this long one in there. I don't know if it's going to fit. There we go. Okay, so now, as it's standing there now, it's touching the top of the spindle mount here, but it's not touching the bottom. So I'm going to move that a bit. We'll move the table back a bit. There we go. So this is also not really an indication, because remember the spindle mount could be skewed as well. So what we really want to measure is the actual spindle itself once the spindle is in there. But to get it as close as possible for the beginning, I guess this will work. Right, so I've just brought it to the side to check it here, and that looks good. Yeah, that looks good. Right, take that out. Okay, so I'll fasten these up. As I mentioned, I'll come around and check all of this again with the spindle. Once the spindle is in, I'll check as it's moving up and down if it's then right. Okay, so then for the next step, it's limit switches that get mounted. So there's one limit switch that goes here on the front, and then there's one that goes on the side over here, and then one up top over here. So now they do provide four. The fourth one gets mounted at the bottom, so let me just turn this. Jesus, it's quite heavy. So one goes here, one goes over this side here, one goes on the front there. They do give another one for the bottom, so if you wanted to make sure that you don't go full on into the bed with a, it becomes a little bit difficult because it depends on what length bit you put in and those kind of things. So that's why they don't generally say you need to mount this one, because it's going to need some fettling on the bit size that you use, those kind of things, to actually get the value out of that one. But yeah, let's get those mounted quickly. So it's only the one pack. The one is separate, which is this bottom, for if you want to use it. They've also got different screw lengths for that. So there's these little screws in here. So there's different screw lengths. There's two shorter ones in here, which is for this one over here. Because it's got this aluminium piece on the back of it, you have to use the shorter screws here. And that's one thing that I've noticed with, if I just look at the construction of the machine and those things, when I was watching all of these other YouTube videos, doing some research on how to build it. I need a smaller one. That's just, this is the smallest Allen key. The smallest Allen key they provide doesn't fit the... Oh, there's the small one, sorry. There is one in the packet. It's hiding behind the other one. So, as I was saying, one of the things that was mentioned was that these screws were too short. Or sorry, too long. So what was happening is they were bottoming out against the aluminium body behind it before it was actually fastening the limit switch. So they've actually given shorter screws here now. I've also seen some constructions where they just move this to the front, so instead of the limit switch being flush now with the body here, with the button standing out a bit, they actually move this whole piece forward. Fastened, and then these two get this one here gets also 10 more screws. Just gonna make sure I put this the right way around. Was it this little black block pushes the button. I'm just going to make sure that the button goes. You see, if I put it this way around, the button is just on the edge here, so it might be better for me to put it that way around. All of these limit switches get used for honing of the machine. So if you tell it to tell the machine to go back home, it knows where to go. And this one's, it doesn't matter how long these are. The version 2 machine comes with 6 of these limit switches. So it comes with 2 for each axis, so that you can, I mean, it's just more protection really, but the software remembers the distance that it can travel, so essentially your software shouldn't allow you to travel further than what your machine can go, but it's just an additional safeguard. So then this one will come this way underneath here, and this is where I suspect some of this, so this cable management rubber comes from, is to actually, you can put this wire in one of these holes, extrusions, and then use some of this to keep it in there. We're not going to put that on now, we'll sort that out later. Just want to get this to the back of the machine. Right, that's done. Next is the emergency switch. Right, let's just get the emergency button in. So another thing that I read about the emergency button that people were talking about is the wires that comes out the back of it. It seems a bit odd, the placement of these wires versus the limit switch, and it might be why some people move the limit switch onto the little bracket on the front, because they're assuming that that the button is going to be hit, or these wires is going to be hit, but it doesn't really look like it to me. I mean, obviously if you've got a very high piece of material that's moving around on this table, but the wires don't seem to be in the way here, so I don't know if they've got shorter emergency switches or what it is, but to me it doesn't look like that will be in the way of the Z-axis movement or anything like that. It's free of all of that. Okay, next up is the main board, or the control board. Got nice plastic covering over it. The newer, so the version 2 of this machine comes with a 32-bit board first of all, but it's a little bit more covered, so it protects the board a little bit better, and a lot of this is still open under and around the coverings, but it's still got a nice screen on it. It's got a fan. Let's get this fastened on over here. Just find the screws. I think this is the pack of screws for it. Yeah. So usually these are the easiest. So they've got little hammer nuts. So what these do is when they go into the extrusion, and as soon as you start turning them, they swing into the extrusion, and then they lock in, So it'll go into the groove and then it will swing and it will actually lock like that because of the size of it. So I'm gonna, easiest way is to actually put all of them very loosely onto the mounting board. So just put them loosely on like that. Okay, then based on diagram, doesn't exactly say what the orientation is, but if you look at the little picture, it shows the fan a little bit more to the right hand side. I'm just assuming you want the power switch to the outside of the machine, so I'll drop it on like this. So all I do now is align these hammer nuts with the extrusion holes like that, and then find the Allen key. Yeah, that's the right one. I'm just going to fasten it with my fingers. Right, that's mounted. Next up is the spindle itself. Turn that. Right, so here's the spindle. So I'm going to put the wires to the right hand side because I've already got wires here on the right hand side. So I'm going to put this there as well because then I can wire those or let them flow together. Okay, so it literally just says put the spindle in, adjust the height to about center, so that the holder is about center of the spindle, or centered in the holder itself. That's about centered, and then tighten it up. Now, you obviously need to make sure that the spindle is tight. I would also say don't crank it down too much that you actually damage the spindle motor, but you want it in there tight enough that it can't move. There we go. Right, that's it. So that's the completed view. That's the instructions that it gives for mounting everything. The wiring guide is separate, so obviously all of these other things and putting it all together, that's now considered separate. One thing that I did notice that I got with my machine, and it's not in the user manual, is these brackets. And I was first struggling to find out where these go. I was checking everything. I was checking here on the bed if the screws, the holes are the same width apart as these, and checking the extrusions for this. If I put it over there, do those holes match the extrusion on the back and on the front? And I couldn't find where these go. Eventually I found it. So in my unboxing video I spoke about the power supply and that these are probably for the power supply, and they are. What I was doing is I was trying to compare the hole placement to the holes on the top and the bottom so that it can actually hold it like that, and I couldn't find it. And afterwards I realized the holes are actually here on the bottom. A real facepalm moment after staring at it for 20 minutes and googling. But these actually fasten on there like that. So I'm just going to get these fastened on quickly. We'll get that placed onto the back as well, which is just going to get it out the way. All of this is again probably a testament to the makers of these machines listening to comments. So a lot of those videos that I've watched, the commentary on them is that the power supply has nowhere where it can stand, it's standing in the way, it's going to get swarf in it, so especially if you're cutting aluminium and things, it's going to get aluminium swarf in it, or plastic that's going to go, or wood that's going to go in and sit in the fan and those kind of things. So they asked for a place for the power supply to mount. A lot of people on those earlier versions of machines were 3D printing brackets and then mounting it to the back of the machines, and I guess here they've listened and they've actually provided it with the machine. There. So I'm going to stick it like this. The reason I'm putting the power on this side is because the cable is so long. I can stick it in here and then have it go over to that side where it has to go in. I think it goes in over here somewhere on top there. There we go. So that fits nicely there. That will go that way, go in there. So now for the wiring, we're going to start off with the limit switches. So first of all, at the bottom here is the limit switches. Okay, so we do the limit switches first. Alright, so for the x-axis, so I kept on calling this the y-axis going over. It's actually the x-axis. The y-axis is the one at the bottom here. So we start off with the x-axis. It's the very first one. So all of these are keyed to fit in to the little onto the board. What the manual is telling me is to skip. So there's 2 for X. So I put the first one in X. I skip the next X. I put the first one in the Y. I skip a Y, but instead of putting it in the first Z, I need to put it into the second Z axis. So let's go there. We put it into the second Z axis. There we go. So those 2 are done. Then next up is the motor, the actual motor cables. So we've got them here. Okay, so now we're going to do the motor cables. So these 2 cables, or the 2 ends of this cable is a little bit different. So the one has got, it's only a 4-pin, and the other one is a 6-pin. So the 6-pin goes onto the motor, onto the actual stepper, and the 4-pin goes onto the board. So if we do the Z axis first, we go there, and then we go Z axis. Okay. So I'm just keeping everything that sits on the Z. I'm just keeping one side because that's all got to get wired together. Okay. Next. This is actually one I still got to tear it apart. There we go. So let's just do this one right here. So let's do the Y. Y is plugged in, and it's telling us to plug it on the second Y. So there's 2 Y axis for the stepper motors on the board. The one becomes the 4th axis. So we'll plug that one in, and then we've got this one for the X. And goes there. That's it. Right, next up in the book, so the spindle, obviously those wires are way too short, so they do give a extension for that. So it's just got a little one-way push box and then more wire, and it goes in here. So the manual does show exactly which one is positive and negative. So the positive goes to the inside, negative to the outside. Let's just open these. First I couldn't, because I tried to look on the board here where's the negative and the positive, and you actually have to take this little white cover off. Under the white cover that's here, you can actually see it's printed on the board, like it is here with this x-axis, y-axis, but they put this little cover over it so you can't see it, but the manual does show which one's positive and which one's negative. So I'm going to go with here. It's obviously self-explanatory. Make sure the spindle motor and the extension going to the board is put on the same side. There we go, and that goes that way again, because that's all got to get cable managed together on that side. Then we've got the emergency stop. So the emergency stop cable that comes here, there's a plug over here for it, and just stick it behind the stepper motor wire. So that's the stop. And then lastly, we've got the power. Now the power I want to take under everything here, because I want to stick the power inside the extrusion, that it remains out the way, and then it'll just come over. Again, the positive is illustrated in the manual. The positive sits on the left hand side. But if you take the little white cover off, it is printed on the board as well. There we go, and that's it. So my thoughts for the Z-axis is to actually print a cable way that this can sit in, but for now I'm just going to put all of this into this wire trunking to keep it all neat. So I'll get all that done quickly. Sorry, I only just realized now I had the fan blowing behind me, so I hope it didn't make too much of a noise and you couldn't hear me. So just some cable management again. I've got one of these, looks like an extrusion holder. So just put the cable in there, and then I can just push this in to hold the cable there so it stays out the way. Because it's the only cable coming from the front of the machine and could get in the way. So just pop it in there. And that's it, now it stays out the way. Okay, I'm just doing some general cable management here. There we go. And that's it. Okay, everything is plugged in. The only thing that I plugged in off camera was the little offline controller, so the ribbon cable just plugs onto a space on the board for it. So yeah, let's get it powered on. So one of the instructions is you must always make sure that the emergency button is released before powering the machine on. If the emergency button is pressed, then the board won't power on. So I've made sure that it is released. Let's get the power supply. Okay, the power supply is running. There's a button here for the main board. Okay, the main board's powered. The little controller is coming on. So just as an illustration, if I push the emergency button now, it powers the board off. If I release the emergency switch, there it comes on again. It actually says watting instead of waiting. Right, so then we've got two options, control or file. We go to file, that literally just shows some sample files that's on there. And if we exit, we can go to control, and that's then to control the various stepper motors. So at the moment it's on 10, there in the corner it says 10, and that is the amount of steps or millimeters that it would move when you ask it to move, and that you can change for 0.1, 1, 5 and 10. So let's try the x-axis first. So there it will go down, up. We want X to go left, X to go right, Y backwards and forwards, and then the middle one is spindle. So if I press that, the spindle should spin up. There we go, spindle is spinning up. And then also it says the spindle is on 10% there, so there is a way to speed the spindle up. So power to spindle, press OK plus the Z plus button to add. So if I press OK, maybe we must stop the spindle first. Okay, so if I press OK and what was it, Z plus, so OK and Z plus, there it's on 50% now, there it's on 100%. Okay, and down 50, 10, 1, so that's 1%. 10%, 50%, 100%. And off. Great, so everything is working. I'm happy with that. Okay, I think I'm going to finish the video off here. It's getting a bit long. I will definitely have another video that's got the config and my final thoughts of the machine in, so you can just keep an eye out for that one. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. It helps getting a little bit more visibility of my videos. If you haven't yet, please consider subscribing to the channel. But thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.